Well, good morning, everyone. What an audience. Thank you for being here. We're so delighted to welcome all of you to the President's lecture series. I'm going to say a few more words about that in a moment. It is so exciting to have a full room, and I'm thrilled that you've joined us to launch this speaker series. I'm delighted to welcome our inaugural distinguished lecturer, General Laura Richardson, to campus. I'm going to say a few more words about her when I introduce her a little bit later in the program, but for now, General Richardson, it is such a pleasure to host you on our campus. Thank you for coming and joining us. Thank you again. And I also want to extend a warm welcome to your husband, retired Lieutenant General Jim Richardson, who is also with us today, has been a long-term collaborator and partner of Carnegie Mellon. Jim, would you stand to be recognized? It is an honor to call Jim Richardson, with whom I've worked for several years here at Carnegie Mellon, and welcome back to CMU, Jim. Happy to have you here. I would also like to recognize Ambassador Jean Maines, who is Civilian Deputy to the Commander and Foreign Policy Advisor for the U.S. Southern Command. Thank you for being here, Ambassador. We have in our audience our trustees, members of our academic administrative leadership teams, including our provost, Jim Garrett, our faculty, staff, students, and community members. I'm not going to mention everybody's by name, you forgive me for that. But last but not least, we have a number of our veterans and service members who are part of our community who are in attendance. Would all of our veterans and service members, including midshipmen, please stand to be recognized? There are a few individuals from this group that I want to acknowledge. Retired Major General Paul Nielsen, who's Director and CEO of our Software Engineering Institute. Captain Michael Toman, who is Commanding Officer of our Steel City Navy ROTC. I saw you, Mike. Thank you for being here. And Paul as well. But there's also one more person that I want to acknowledge. It turns out it's my father-in-law. Retired Air Force Colonel David Casey, who served honorably two tours of duty in Vietnam. He's here. Dave, would you stand to be recognized? Turns out I get to do this because I'm university president, you know. I happen to know that Dave just celebrated his 83rd birthday this last Monday. Happy birthday, Dave. Thank you for being here. And thank you for letting your daughter marry me, by the way. I was an unemployed graduate student at the time, so I think it worked out okay. Back to the regularly scheduled programming. I should also mention that Carnegie Mellon is home to AI2C, the Army AI Intelligence Integration Center, which brings together soldiers with some of the world's brightest scholars to help design and deliver the Army of the future. I know some of our AI2C members are here today. Thank you again for joining us, and thank you for all you do. This newly launched President's Lecture Series is designed to connect members of our CMU community to national leaders in the public and private sector. It gives our campus community a chance to hear directly from these leaders and explore a range of topics from science and technology to policy and culture that is shaping our society today. The series itself arrives at a pivotal time for our country and for society. As technology continues to evolve at a rapid pace, new challenges and opportunities emerge. But the need to safeguard our strength and our priorities remain the same, including global competitiveness and national security and democracy. CMU is very proud to do its part in supporting these efforts. As a leader at the intersection of technology and creativity, Carnegie Mellon advances the work of AI, machine learning, and cybersecurity for good. And with the steadfast support of our public and private sector partners, we're applying innovations from CMU's laboratories to practice all while also advancing knowledge to benefit society and improve human condition. The importance of leveraging technology to address some of our most complex societal challenges, and also the importance of leveraging partnership to tackle such challenges are familiar areas of focus for our inaugural distinguished speaker today. So without further delay, it is my pleasure to introduce General Laura J. Richardson, the 32nd Commander of the U.S. Southern Command. In her role, General Richardson oversees a team with representation from all branches of the U.S. military and operations in the area of responsibility that covers 31 countries across Central and South America, as well as the Caribbean. Under General Richardson's command, SOUTHCOM priorities include strengthening international partnerships, responding to natural disasters, countering threats, and much more. And rather just reading her bio to you, I just want to run through a couple of her many accomplishments throughout her career. General Richardson's career has been described, including by President Joe Biden himself, as barrier-breaking. She's the first and only woman to serve as commander for SOUTHCOM. And she's just the second Army woman in history to raise to the rank of 4-star. You can clap. It's really, seriously. People who know General Richardson aren't surprised at all by her career highlights, because it seems she has a limit pusher. She's been a limit pusher from the very beginning. At age 15, General Richardson began taking pilot lessons and managed to earn her pilot's license at the age of 17, even before she could vote. Years later, she would fly Black Hawk helicopters and command the 5th Battalion of the 101st Aviation Brigade in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom. She has served as a military aide to Vice President Al Gore, and unsurprisingly, she has earned a long list of awards and decorations throughout her distinguished career. Given her reputation for trailblazing, it's fitting that she is our inaugural speaker for our newly launched President's Lecture Series. Would you please join me in extending a warm welcome to the Commander of the U.S. Southern Command, General Laura Richardson.
Well, good morning, and thank you, President Farnham, very much. It's good to see everybody here. How's everyone doing? Good. Well, that's great, and it's great to be here at Carnegie Mellon University in Tartan Country, downtown Pittsburgh, and I'm very honored to speak to you today. So I have a video I want to show you. It shows you a little bit, you know how pictures are worth a million words, and so I'm going to tee up a video real fast before I start my presentation. So let's go ahead and roll the U.S. SOUTHCOM video. Well, again, President Farnham, thank you for the invitation to speak to Carnegie Mellon and everybody here. I really appreciate the invitation, and I appreciate everything that you and the CMU team do each and every day to foster education and innovation in our country and across the globe. So thank you. You take on complexities and tackle really hard challenges through this education and innovation. And a big shout out and thank you to the faculty and students who came out today. And I appreciate your interest in the security of the Western Hemisphere, and I look forward to your questions a little later. Well, you might be asking yourselves, why is a four-star general speaking to you today? Maybe. And my answer is that Carnegie Mellon and the Department of Defense have been partnering on technology development for many decades, and the partnerships have been extremely beneficial to both. From 2018 to 2022, the Department of Defense has invested over $279 million towards CMU research in robotics and autonomy, software and architecture, human-machine learning, and machine learning and analytics, just to name a few. The collaboration that happens right here between academia and Defense Department is truly amazing. The National Robotics Engineering Center is one of a kind and has been conducting research with the department since 2001. The Software Engineering Institute, a federally funded research and development center, has been a catalyst for DoD research in software engineering, cybersecurity, and artificial intelligence. And in teaming with CMU, the U.S. Army, as the President mentioned, stood up the Army's Artificial Intelligence Integration Center, and integration is the key word there, or AI2C. And this has already put technology into the hands of soldiers, and it is transforming the Army for the future as we speak. But you know this already. You work it every single day. Today, I would like to tell you about the challenges and the opportunities that exist in the Western Hemisphere, knowing that the expertise in this room can leverage this technology and develop innovative solutions to make the Americas, which is where we all live, even a more secure place to live. As I talk through, I would ask that you think through three things. First, consider how your research here at CMU applies to this region and the challenges that I described today. Second, look for the opportunities to your innovative technologies from the controlled laboratory environment to a permissive, practical application environment, and maybe even in United States Southern Command's region. And third, consider career paths within the federal government that allow you to apply the expertise that you develop here at CMU to the problem sets of climate change, irregular migration, transnational criminal organizations, disinformation, and strategic competition, all the challenges the United States and our neighbors to the south face. So what is the United States Southern Command, and what do we do? Well, the Department of Defense divides the globe into 6 geographic combatant commands. Each of these 6 commands are aligned to the regions of Europe, Asia, Africa, North and South America, and the Middle East. And within these designated areas of responsibility, we create partnerships with all of these countries. As commander of U.S. Southern Command, my area of responsibility includes Central and South America and the Caribbean. I work for the President of the United States and the Secretary of Defense. This is a vast region of 31 countries. I also work with the 11 dependencies that are in the Caribbean. But out of the 31 countries, 28 like-minded democracies, and U.S. Southern Command works very closely with the military forces and the public security forces of these nations on security cooperation initiatives, all based in the rule of law, human rights, and the professionalization of their forces. In Southcom, we bring together the whole of government, or what I like to call Team USA. The icons on this chart represent the different partnerships that we have and the liaisons that we actually have from these agencies that work in my headquarters in Miami. We're fortunate to have liaison officers from 11 different countries from the region, as well as all of our allies. We also partner with many different academic institutions throughout the U.S., bringing additional diversity and thought and expertise, as well as with Carnegie Mellon. Lastly, we have 24 full-time liaisons from 15 different interagencies, each bringing a different perspective and authorities that help us accomplish our mission. History, economics, and family ties bond the United States with all of the countries in my region, which is really what I call our neighborhood. And countries are desperately looking for increased investment in this hemisphere, and I would say that Team USA needs to step it up. This is a region that is so rich in resources that it has the potential to deliver equitable and quality education, healthcare, and prosperity across the region. $740 billion in trade with the US, and in South America in particular, we are now the #2 trading partner, and China has surpassed us. 60% of the world's lithium in the lithium triangle between Argentina, Bolivia, Chile. 31% of the world's fresh water, greater than 25% of the world's high and medium potential farmland. The Amazon serves as the lungs of the world. The biodiversity is off the charts. Light sweet crude discovered off the shores of Guyana, contributing to it being the fastest growing economy in the world for the next 5 years at 25%. Rare earth minerals, gold and copper. Bottom line, this region matters. And it has so much potential, and technology can play a pivotal role to increase opportunities for university partnerships and business development. Bottom line, the Western Hemisphere has the potential to feed and fuel the world, but it is often hampered by the fragility of the security environment. This hemisphere in which we live is extremely important, but there are a lot of challenges. These challenges require innovative solutions, and what I've found is that it requires a call to action. It's a call to action to show that democracies can deliver for their people. As I look out in this audience, I'm encouraged because I know someone out here is currently working on a project that can have a positive impact to this region. And a little goes a long way. Latin America is still suffering from the devastating impacts of COVID-19, the 170 million people that were thrown into poverty as a result, and an average decrease of 8.5 GDP across the region. As a result, there is a vicious cycle of insecurity and instability that has emerged. Transnational criminal organizations are more powerful, they're more violent, and they have diversified their portfolio. They not only traffic drugs, they traffic humans, they conduct illegal mining, illegal logging, illegal fishing, and deforestation. Climate change has increased the severity of natural disasters, as we all know. El Nino this year is bringing either flooding or droughts to many of the countries in this region. The water levels in the Panama Canal are low and causing ships to carry less cargo, which reduces trade. Chile is recovering from the once-in-a-thousand-year wildfires for the entire month of February in 2023, earlier this year. Illegal, unregulated, and unreported fishing is depleting the region's food supply and equates to an annual $3 billion loss in revenue each year for the Latin American coastal countries. In my region, on any given day, there are 250 to 642 Chinese deep-water fishing vessels raiding the fish. People are on the move, and irregular migration is at unprecedented numbers. People are leaving their homes in search of a better life. 7 million people have poured out of Venezuela into an already dire economic region. And all this has created a humanitarian and environmental crisis in Latin America and the Caribbean. These challenges weaken democratic institutions by causing a decline in public trust, endemic corruption, and a lack of confidence in democracies. Democratically elected leaders are on the stopwatch, not the calendar, and typically they're in this seat for one term of 4 years to provide rapid solutions for their people. And if these challenges weren't enough, strategic competition with communist regimes, China, Russia, and Iran, is also at an all-time high, as these regimes take advantage of the dire situation and exploit the region. President Xi, in the first quarter of 2023, hosted more than 40 high-level visits with senior leaders from across the globe, and specifically 6 presidents from the Western Hemisphere. In April of this year, Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov conducted visits to Cuba, Venezuela, Nicaragua, and Brazil. In June of this year, Iran's President Raisi also visited Cuba, Venezuela, and Nicaragua. The People's Republic of China has expanded its government-controlled, state-owned enterprises footprint through the Belt and Road Initiative, disguising extraction as economic investment in all of the Western Hemisphere's critical infrastructure. 22 of 31 Western Hemisphere countries are BRI signatories, with the PRC projects in deepwater ports, 3G, 4G, 5G telecoms, telecommunications, energy, safe city, smart city technology, and space-enabling infrastructure. Space-enabling infrastructure has a valid scientific purpose, but can also be used to track, monitor, disrupt, and also target U.S., allies, and partners' satellite systems. And what concerns me most is these state-owned enterprise projects can be dual use, used for both civilian and military application. And with China's largest military buildup of any country since World War II in conventional and nuclear military capabilities, we must ask ourselves, why so much investment in the Western Hemisphere's critical infrastructure? PRC has done the same in Africa, and I see the Western Hemisphere is about 7 to 10 years behind what happened in Africa. Disinformation is used by communist countries to drive a wedge into the hemisphere and increase their own presence. What I see today is a huge increase in disinformation, especially from Russian outlets. And from my perspective, we are in conflict in the information space, not just in competition. Russia conducts prolific disinformation campaigns delivered through Russia Today Español, Sputnik Mundo, and Telesur, with over 31 million followers in Latin America. These are not traditional news sources, and they don't practice verification journalism. Russia has leveraged that reach to inflame political tensions, especially before and during important elections and Russia's invasion of Ukraine. As you can probably tell, I'm very passionate about this hemisphere. President Biden says in his national security strategy that no region impacts the United States more directly than the Western Hemisphere. Southcom's presence in the region allows me and my team to develop relationships with the senior leaders of each country, complementing the great work of our ambassadors and what our ambassadors, our U.S. embassies, and those country teams do in country on the ground. And as I travel and visit our partner nations, it's great to hear firsthand. I'm able to hear, see, feel it, their challenges that they face, because I must see it through their eyes to fully appreciate the magnitude. The good news is that we have very willing partners, and these willing partners are ready to tackle these challenges, and they're wanting to do it. And I call this partnership that we have is team democracy, leveraging all instruments of national power that the United States has to assist struggling democracies to overcome these challenges and deliver for their people so that they don't feel like they have to turn to the authoritarian and communist regimes for help. These communist regimes don't respect the human rights of their own people, and they certainly don't respect the human rights of other countries. Team democracy provides a much better option. The United States instruments of national power consist of 4 things, and I make it very simple and use the very simple acronym called DIME, D-I-M-E. And the D stands for diplomats, number 1. And having our U.S. ambassadors, Senate confirmed, and in the seat is number 1 priority. And currently, just a snapshot for today, we have 60 U.S. ambassadors awaiting confirmation and 6 vacant ambassadors in the Western Hemisphere. Team USA can do better. And there's plenty of blame to go around on both sides of the aisle. Team USA's just got to do better. Southcom works shoulder to shoulder with the Department of State. In fact, and as the President introduced my civilian deputy at U.S. Southcom, Ambassador Jean Maines, we have fantastic relationships with all the U.S. ambassadors. I have 22 security cooperation offices embedded in the U.S. embassies in the region. And so that very tight and collaborative relationship is alive and well. And it has to be, because all of us don't have all the resources that we need to solve all these problems. The I in DIME is for information, so countering the disinformation, the misinformation, and highlighting the positive impacts of democracies. E stands for economics, and after meeting with the most of the presidents, actually, in Latin America and the Caribbean, more economic investment is what is desperately needed through our private sector investment. I went to see Secretary of State Antony Blinken and asked for his assistance on raising the profiles of our U.S. companies that are in the Western Hemisphere, and he agreed. I also went to see our Secretary of Commerce, Gina Raimondo, and asked for her support as well, and she also agreed. And in August, I traveled with Secretary Raimondo to Panama, and this was the day after President Biden had announced that Panama and Costa Rica were 2 of 7 countries that the U.S. will partner with on semiconductor supply chain. From that trip, she coined the phrase, economic security equals national security. U.S. investment carries with it several advantages that are inherently democratic. U.S. investments respect the rule of law, protects intellectual property. It has strong anti-corruption measures, international labor standards, and the hiring of local workers there in the country, environmental standards, workplace diversity, and the promotion of women. These are qualities not seen in any of the PRC's Belt and Road Initiative projects. The M in DIME stands for military. That's what Southcom does. And we have 2 types of levers, and that's hard power and soft power. And you saw some of those on the video. Southcom conducts 8 large-scale exercises annually, as well as 3 regional security conferences. Each exercise is multi-domain, multi-dimensional, and we layer in innovative new technologies while also increasing our partner nations' capabilities and capacities at the same time. For example, we co-hosted UNITAS 2023. Colombia was the host. It was in Cartagena, which is this exercise, UNITAS, or as they say in the region, UNITAS, is our longest running maritime exercise for over 6 decades. Actually, this is the 64th exercise in July. 27 partner nations employed 26 naval vessels, 3 submarines, 40 aircraft, and over 7,000 people. During this exercise, we experimented with manned and unmanned teaming and the use of autonomous vessels to conduct operations. Some of this work entails economic investment in military hard power capabilities so that partner nations can secure their countries. However, where we really win the day, in my opinion, is through our soft power capabilities to provide services and improve the lives of populations in the region. One of the shining examples of soft power is Southcom's Operation Continuing Promise. Last year, the United States Navy ship Comfort sailed to 5 countries in 52 days to provide free health care to those in need. Over 40,000 patients were treated. The Women, Peace, and Security Program is another soft power lever, a core value in Southcom, and we integrated it into everything that we do. In the year 2000, the United Nations passed the UN Security Resolution on Women, Peace, and Security, focused on the promotion of gender equity and equality in efforts to prevent conflict, promote peace, and counter violent extremism. The most capable militaries in the world leverage all their people, regardless of gender. And at Southcom, we emphasize the importance of the 4 pillars of WPS: recruitment, retaining, training, and advancement. And I must brag a little because in Latin America and the Caribbean, we're proud to have 2 women presidents, 2 women vice presidents, a woman prime minister, 2 women ministers of defense, the only woman chief of defense, and also the only woman senior enlisted leader in the entire world. From my perspective as a commander, we must constantly leverage new technologies to maintain overmatch of our strategic competitors while assisting democratic governments in securing their borders and meeting the needs of their people. To do so, Southcom is already incorporating many new technologies in our work with our partner nations. The hardest part may be bringing it all together. And the graphic in the middle is the environment I have to be able to operate in as a military commander. The projects you are working on here at CMU have the potential to tremendously assist in this effort, and not just for Southcom and the Department of Defense. Your work will help democracies across the Western Hemisphere emerge as global leaders to feed and fuel the world. I advertise my area of responsibility in Southcom as an innovation testbed. Proximity, permissive environment, willing partners, real-world challenges that allow practical application. Just think about the possibilities. Cyber capabilities here can ensure our democratic partners can secure their financial institutions, prevent malicious attacks during elections, protect healthcare systems and their records, teach basic hygiene so they can protect their data. Robotics technology can provide assistance to those in need during natural disasters, help governments provide goods and services to remote areas, increase mineral and agriculture production to bring economic prosperity, provide medical care in ways we have not yet thought of. Advances in artificial intelligence and machine learning can predict weather patterns to provide early warning for these natural disasters, provide analysis of information so leaders can make more informed decisions, identify and counter disinformation and misinformation, determine how the negative effects of climate change can be effectively combated. I could go on and on about the possibilities, and hopefully my lecture today has provided some new ideas on the utility of your research. But technology itself will not provide solutions. There has to be policy that supports the use of the new technology, agreements between countries, and an understanding of the risks, which makes me really excited about the Carnegie Mellon Institute for Security and Technology, or CMIST. There's so much going on here at CMU, and I look forward to seeing how the hard work here can translate into solutions for this very important region. I'd like to close my remarks by saying thank you for your passion and what you do to make a positive difference in the world, as well as our nation. And I look forward to the discussion with President Farnum and your questions. So thank you very, very much.
Well, first of all, thank you again for being here. Thank you for kicking off this series and also sharing your insights with us. For the members of the audience, after a few questions on our fireside chat, we're going to open it up to you. So there should be on the screen for you to be able to submit your questions, and hopefully we'll get to a few of them before our session is over. And I know we're going to run out of time before we know it. So with that, before I start with a question related to Southern Command and your responsibilities and the strategic importance of it to our nation and globally, I want to start with a bit of a personal question. As all of you see on the screen, there's a picture from Time magazine, and General Richardson is familiar with this photo. It is in fact a picture from March of 2003. The story is on military families and describes you and your husband, General Jim Richardson, as, and I quote, the first husband and wife battalion commanders. So, a little bit of a background about this before I get to my question. When this story was reported in March of 2003, you were in Kuwait, serving as a Black Hawk helicopter and commanding an assault helicopter battalion. General Jim Richardson was leading another battalion of Apache helicopters, and your daughter, who was in 8th grade, was back home living with family and friends. So, what was it like to be the face of military parents and the military family? And as a parent, and I'm sure most of the parents here are wondering the same question. How the heck did you and Jim pull it off?
Well, that's where it takes a village, right? And so we were very lucky to have that village. And we were lieutenant colonels at the time, so gosh, I think we had been in the military about 17 years-ish. And so every assignment, when you're a dual military couple in the military, a single parent, you always have to have what they call a family care plan. And that's because you have to be able to do your job of why you're in the military in the first place, right? And that's to be able to deploy if your nation needs you to deploy. Because we need each and every person to do, their very important jobs to make that team be able to be successful. And so, but we had that village. We had Jim's folks, my folks, and we had great friends that this is our lifestyle of many, many thousands of people. So it's a lifestyle that is understood. And so obviously, Lauren was in 8th grade, and that's never, when it actually happens. And that's a very vulnerable time, right? You could pick out times of military children. When is the best time for parents to be able to deploy? I don't think there's a best time ever, quite honestly. But a young person, young kid that's getting ready to be like a teenager, it's hard to process, all of that. But again, we had a really good village, and we were able to do that, deploy, and actually the Time reporter that wrote the story was embedded with us for about a month with our units at Fort Campbell as we were going through packing up all our aircraft and packing up all our equipment. And in fact, the night before I was deploying, they were at my house, and I was packing my stuff. Finally, I said, "Okay, I think you guys need to go now. I'll see you tomorrow." And then when the story came out, we were already deployed in Kuwait, and then we crossed the berm into Iraq to do our combat missions when it was required. But again, it's a network and a community of a lot of people that really help each other out in the military.
That's just truly impressive. That's just amazing. By the way, General Jim Richardson told me last night, there's a picture of him, but I think it's in the back page, somewhere in the back. But more seriously, so how does your daughter reflect on this? She's not here to offer a rebuttal, so.
Well, I think the military kids, they're so resilient. They really are. She would not trade any of her experiences that she has had growing up in the military, being able to live all over the world, have friends. When they're going through it, it's not as great right then and there, when you have to move and leave your friends and go to a new place and go to a new school, all that kind of, all those kinds of challenges. And it gets harder as they get, to be teenagers and things like that. But she is very, very, very open, independent. She's able to handle things very, very easily. Changes and things that happen in her life.
So my wife, of course, who is a daughter of an Air Force colonel, as I mentioned, tells me that she had to learn how to make friends real quickly.
Yeah.
Because every few years you pack your bags and you go somewhere else, which is quite impressive. I do want to say, I'm going off my script, by the way, if you're just wondering about this. I do want to say that General Richardson, Jim Richardson, with whom I've had the pleasure of working, is that me? No. With whom I had the pleasure of working for the last several years, kept talking about his granddaughter, who is now 5 or 6 years old. And Jim is already telling me that she's going to apply to Carnegie Mellon. I don't know what class that would be. As president, I can't admit anybody, but Jim Garrett, our provost, is here. He can admit anybody, even at the age of 5 or 6. So let's talk about your command. Let's talk about the U.S. Southern Command. As you mentioned, it's a huge area. It's 14.5 million square miles across Central America, South America, and the Caribbean. It's an area of responsibility that includes 31 countries, 11 areas of specialty sovereignty, everything essentially south of Mexico. Would you elaborate a little bit on the mission of Southern Command, but more specifically, earlier you talked about, and you've spoken about this in other venues, about the U.S. as soft power and the importance of that. Can you tell us a little bit in terms of the international competition that we face for influence in the Southern Command area of responsibility that's growing in telecommunication, pharmaceutical, energy, space, cyber, manufacturing, and so on? Why is soft power even more important today than, say, a decade ago? And how can we make United States be a stronger contender when it comes to being a partner in the Western Hemisphere?
So I would, in terms of the mission that we get to do in U.S. Southcom, is before I even came to Southcom, I've been there almost 2 years now, but decades of a huge reputation with the region and with our partner nation countries. And you know, our partner nations are looking for us to be able to partner, but then deliver, right? So I can go to all these countries. I'm able to go there and meet with their leaders, see their challenges. But then, you know, it's a reciprocal relationship, and we got to be able to understand what they need to overcome their challenges. Now, by our national security strategy from the President and national defense strategy by Secretary Austin, my number one pacing challenge, and everybody in the Department of Defense, is the People's Republic of China. That's our pacing challenge. What's at the top? China isn't at the top of the list for our partner nations as a pacing challenge for them, or what is at the top of their list for the security challenges are the transnational criminal organizations. And I talked briefly about them in terms of the drug trafficking. I have the drug trafficking problem predominantly of cocaine in the region. I have producing countries, I have transit countries. I have 8 subordinate commands, and one of my commands, called Joint Interagency Task Force South, has the mission of detection and monitoring. And so they detect illicit drug trafficking in the maritime and air tracks coming to the United States, and we turn that information over to law enforcement so interdictions can take place, or disruptions, and or our partner nations, if it's closer to Panama, if it's closer to a country, that they go after that. And I'm proud to say that 60 or 76% of the interdictions that actually take place, our partner nations do them. So, you know, we want to help our partners be able to help us, right? Because it's a two-way street, as we all know. But the thing is that help them to be able to make them stronger. You got more people in the network. Secretary Austin calls that integrated deterrence. What I like to say to our partner nations is team democracy. I don't have to explain integrated deterrence. That doesn't translate very well with our partners. That can mean lots of different things to different people, but it's a mesh network of a team that wants to work together. And so how do we build that team? How do we make it seamless, not borders between countries? How do we get these countries to work together, and then how do we facilitate that for them to be able to counter these challenges? Because the human trafficking, the drug trafficking, I talked about the deforestation, that's through the Amazon. I talked about the Amazon, lungs of the world, the biodiversity, but it's huge swaths of land. You just had 8 of the Amazon presidents get together for a conference in Brazil. Number one, for them to get together, all of them together, on short notice. They didn't decide anything, but it was important enough for all of them to get together. Will they get together again? Absolutely. So it's at the top of the list of all these countries, and as you see, as we get leftist leaders that come into power through the democratic process, free and fair elections, so, you know, how am I able to work with them? Well, they have a really big domestic agenda. Right. And our soft power fits very nicely in their priorities and their domestic agenda. So that's how I work, you know, our way, Team USA, as part of Team Democracy, so we don't have this democratic backsliding, which we see. So, you know, we have competition. Sure. And we haven't had competition like this before in this hemisphere. Now we do, and we don't give up. We figure out how we're going to adapt and get after it.
So when it comes to soft power, are we at an inherent disadvantage? Are there things that put us at a disadvantage when it comes to doing this global competition in terms of our influence in the region?
I would say with soft power, we have an advantage. But what I'm trying to do with Team USA is I get to travel around. I don't think there's any other leader, actually, in any of our agencies that travels around as much as I am able to do. And so as I meet with these leaders and see all these challenges, and I say, okay, we're missing economic investment. Like I go to Honduras and I meet with President Castro there. And she's talking to me about their issues and concerns. We got 250 U.S. companies in the Western Hemisphere, or in Honduras, in Honduras specifically. But you'd never know it. I don't ever see a flag. I don't ever see anybody talking about it. They're talking about my military hard power equipment is usually what they need, like helicopters and vehicles and things like that. But I see that they have a need, and they don't see that our investment is there. So how can we not be so stovepipe in all of our instruments of national power and bring that together and showcase it? If I take like the Chinese, they got a pretty good thing going on with their instruments of national power through the Belt and Road Initiative. Being able to wrap that up in a nice package looks like investment, but it's not. I call it extraction under the guise of economics because they have the ability to put forward those projects and that cash.
You mentioned illicit drug trafficking and the issues that you have to deal with and nation partners have to deal with. What is your overall assessment and candid assessment of illicit drug trafficking threats in the area? And you also mentioned, there are opportunities. Of course, there have been some successes in recent weeks and so on that we heard about from the Coast Guard and others. Can emerging technologies assist you, and in what ways can it assist?
Yes,
dealing with this issue?
absolutely, absolutely. So we have, I can't have aircraft and Navy ships and Coast Guard ships all over my area. The region, we had the map up there just a second ago, is huge. So how do I cover? How do I see? How do our partners see? They have a hard time seeing too. And they need ground-based radars. They need to be able to have an ability to see. We have ways of sharing. We have information sharing agreements with different countries based on our relationship, based on our trust between each other and those sorts of things. And but technology is huge to be able to have solar-powered things that have long dwell. We have with every combatant commander, every military commander will tell you that they don't have enough ISR, the ability to see, or have enough domain awareness to be able to tell what threats are coming into the region, right? Again, the area is huge, but that's where technology comes into play. We have aircraft that are contract-owned, like they're white aircraft. They don't look like military aircraft, but they're only up in the air for about 5 or 6 hours. I need something up there 24/7. So that's where technology can come into play. Long dwell, autonomous, air, maritime, those sorts of things. I will tell you with it, also with the illicit drug trafficking, and then all that diversified portfolio of all those things, illegal fishing, illegal mining, illegal logging, $3 billion annual revenue business per year. How is that money getting cleaned? The money laundering is off the charts. We have got to figure out a way, because that's where you really get after. That's where you start making a difference. It's not going after the little go-fast vessel or the semi-submersible in the middle of the Atlantic. That's not how you get after that problem. You go after the labs, you go after the money, you go after where it really hurts. But we can't, that's a very complex issue, and following that money is very hard. But how do we do that with technology? We got to figure that out before that consumes them. That's what's at the top of their list, are these transnational criminal organizations that they're fighting every single day. And I see that they're all connected, though. When I look at the illegal mining going on in Brazil, Brazil's been responding to the Yanomami crisis, which is illegal mining, and the poisoning of an indigenous population as a result of the waters. I had the picture up there. You saw the hazmat situation with all the water, because that poisons the water. And so, but I see it connected all through Brazil, down into Colombia, over to the shores of Colombia with Ecuador. All of these transnational criminal organizations are connected some way, somehow. So how do we get our countries to work better together? How do we not have borders be seams where these transnational criminal organizations are able to flourish? All of these countries have riverine systems, have a river system that is unpatrolled. It's not governed. And this is where they are able to, these criminals are able to get in and traffic everything. And so how do we help them? We can do that with technology.
I can spend the rest of the afternoon just talking to you. And I know our audience would be interested in that as well, but you have a very tight schedule. So with that, Bethany, do we have questions from the audience? Can we take a couple of questions from the audience?
We have quite a few questions from the audience.
Sure.
So I'll start with this one. As a combatant commander, what is the first piece of information you need daily? And can software help deliver this to you faster?
Yes, so first, the first thing I do, I have my Deputy J2, or my Deputy Intelligence Officer for the command that's here, Anna Gonzalez, and so what I get very, very early in the morning is an intelligence read book, and it puts together all of the national intelligence that we have, reports from our 22 offices that I mentioned that are, I call it downrange, but in the region. On the ground. I really call that my tip of the spear for information and understanding what's going on, because they're there working with our partners all the time. And so it's seeing where we are in terms of that for the day, and then constant reporting. Actually, we have my guidance as a combatant commander, I learned this in a couple jobs before this one, is flat communications. Flatten the layers. We don't have information has a timestamp on it, and it doesn't last, and it's not relevant for very long before other things start to happen. So as you put together all these, I call it INW, or indicators and warnings, how do you start putting together what's happening and what's something that's going to get bigger and spiral out of control that you might be able to work on initially if you have a little bit, of the indicators and warnings.
More questions?
Next question. What advice would you give to young women in the military who are just starting their careers?
Well, I give advice, I would say not just young women, but young men as well, is that keep your head down. Don't try to come into an organization and fit in right away and make friends. Obviously, you want to have friends, but put your head down. You're there for a reason. You have a skill that you're going to contribute to that organization or the team, and the team wants you to be able to be proficient at your skill, right? And that's how you fit in. That's how everything will fall into place. So don't worry about it. Just get in there. Know what you've. When you go to school, the military always teaches you what you got to do before you get there. So pay attention in school, and then when you get there, they'll teach you the ropes in terms of the particular missions of a military unit or your organization or your civilian employment. But knowing your skill set and being proficient at what you do, and getting up to speed in your job will allow that all to fall into place.
By the way, that's great advice for our young students, young staff, young faculty, men and women. Thank you for that.
I didn't do that. That's why. That's why I'm telling you the mistakes I made. So.
Bethany, let's take one more question.
Last question. So how can students in STEM aid military efforts, and are there specific areas or programs that they should be looking at?
So say that one more time. How can the military?
How can students in STEM aid military efforts? So what programs could they look at, or what areas of the military should they look at for opportunities?
Yeah, I would say there's tons of opportunities. We don't, in some cases you might think that the military is very far technologically advanced. Others may think we're kind of in the Stone Age or something like that. I would say that to ensure that our our country stays as strong as it is, you have to be able to have a strong deterrent effect, and that is, quite honestly, your military. And then being able to do that, everybody looks up to the United States military. Everybody. I was just in Canada a week ago as well, having a meeting with all of our allies that work in the Western Hemisphere. I have those allies represented as well with liaison officers in my headquarters. And they all look up to us, not just our partners in other countries. So how do we maintain that overmatch of our strategic competitors? It's very important. And then how do you, with STEM and all of the things that we have in place, I think this AI2C program, this partnership between the Army and Carnegie Mellon it's really tremendous, because that I for integration really bridges that gap. You have warfighters that are they're going out to, going to Poland and going to Europe and finding out what the challenges are and bringing that back and helping create software and things like that will help solve the problems of those leaders over there dealing with all those challenges. Is that slide that I showed you, all those different things happening at once. People can't do that, right? You have to leverage the technology to do that, but you have to make sure that your technology is working in favor. I was talking with Dr. Cronin earlier, in terms of the policies and the things that you have to have in place to make sure AI is actually facilitating what you're doing and not working against you. So
I'm going to wrap up by asking a couple of really quick questions. This is for the benefit of mostly our students. We talked about how complex your job is. We talked about the scope of responsibility, area of influence is just enormous. Of course, this is not just a 9-to-5 job, clearly. To get where you are, you must have mastered the art and science of managing not only complexity, but also stress. Now, CMU, it's known for its academic rigor. You and I and General Richardson were talking about this earlier this morning. Our students, while they're brilliant, they take on too much. They're not immune to stress. So what advice do you have for our students when it comes to managing complexity and managing stress, especially on those most stressful days that you face? And I'm sure there are plenty of them. What do you do? How do you manage it?
Well, I think there are different ways of handling stress. I would say I was in sports growing up since I was a little kid. I was a swimmer. And so there was swimming meets would generally go over, start on a Friday night with the long distance events, and then all day Saturday, all day Sunday. And, you would be swimming at least a dozen events over that time period. And, the win was always at front and center. And then all of the grueling workouts and swimming workouts, the lifting weights, the running, all of that, right? And so I had a little bit of that stress, having to live with stress coming up. But I would say, telling students, get some sleep. Sleep's really critical. Been a lot of studies on sleep. Then the thing is that you got to figure out how you're going to do that, because you got to be your best at all times. You want to be your best. You got to be able to think clearly. You have to be able to do multitask big time. And be able to keep things. I can't remember everything, so I write everything down. I have my team that helps me remember things too, because it's not just remembering everything, right? But then it's also, how do you prioritize? Because if you don't prioritize, because you got to be able to go from strategic to tactical too. In some cases, you got to understand what's happening on the ground to be able to facilitate and inform those decisions that you got to make at the strategic level. So who's informing you? Who's your people on the ground? That's why I said those offices, that for me, my senior defense official, my security cooperation officers that are in these countries are my tip of the spear, right? They're my eyes and ears. They're talking to my partners every single day. So I've got to be able to get that information. So you have to have multiple streams of information too, and then you got to be able to prioritize. And we do that. We have processes within the headquarters, priority intelligence requirements that we have.
I have commander critical information requirements, what we call a CCIR, and those are like wake up, call me in the middle of the night if that happens. Those kinds of things that we have in place so we can be able to respond quick enough.
Terrific. You know, when you mentioned get some sleep, our Dino student, Gina Castellino, is sitting up here saying, yes. Well, final question. As I mentioned earlier, you're the 32nd Combatant Commander of the U.S. Southern Command, and all 31 leaders before you were men. You became the first female Army combatant commander, as well as the third woman to lead a combatant command in any branch of the DoD. It begs the question, what advice do you have, particularly leadership advice do you have, for our young women and young men on our campus? The floor is yours.
Well, I would say I covered some points in my remarks, and I really believe that those are my advice and my pearls of wisdom or anything like that. I think that it's important that opportunities. It's all about opportunities. It really is, and we shouldn't be surprised when everybody's given an opportunity. Actually, what happens, right? But I mean, we could take it with women's sports. So having been in swimming and all of those sorts of things, I had no idea that Title IX just went into place a couple of years before I started swimming. I just thought that's the way it always was. Now I fully appreciate all those things that were put in place to open up the opportunities. When I was coming up as a young pilot, I couldn't fly the aircraft that Jim flew. He was a Cobra pilot and an OH-58 pilot, so they flew the attack mission. And then he eventually was flying Apaches. I would love to have flown Apaches and fired Hellfire missiles and 30-millimeter cannon and all those kinds of things, right? And so, but the policies, the law did not allow that when I was coming up. But now the opportunities are open. And the interview that we did with Dr. Cronin earlier today, Jim said it. I mean, he had one of the first women that came into his unit as, I think, a captain or a lieutenant. And she ended up being the best shooter in the battalion. And so we shouldn't be surprised what we see when the opportunities. Let the full talent pool compete and increase your readiness and increase the talent of the organization and the competitiveness of the organization. It's a no-brainer to me.
Of course. So. I don't know if the audience could hear Jim, but Jim whispered here that it all worked out. I sense a little competition here, by the way, don't you? Well, with that, General Richardson, thank you for being with us. Thank you being We all know how busy you are and what time pressure you're under, but being so generous with your time, spending time yesterday afternoon, last night, and this morning and this afternoon on our campus with various research teams, with Software Engineering Institute, with RAND Corporation, and of course with thought leaders on our campus, and including our Navy ROTC midshipmen. Thank you again for being here. Audience, thank you for joining us. All of you stayed. Thank you. Once again, please join me in thanking General Laura Richardson for being here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you.